all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus 8. Social Capital, the types, uses, and how to acquire it. Written by Conrad Riker, available now. Links in description. Social Capital, a field guide for men who still notice reality. The phallic cinnamon conspiracy. Deconstructing the Marxist derangement behind phallic projection and the war on Western masculinity. Look at the cinnamon stick on your counter. To a rational man, it is bark from a tree, perhaps a pleasant addition to a morning coffee or a holiday glaze, but to Dr. Winona, feminist, Marxist, PhD, it is a violently erected monument of oppression, a rigid, phallic rod of colonial subjugation. This is not merely a difference of opinion. It is a diagnostic marker of a mind possessed by a recursive pathology of hate. When a critical theorist looks at a spice rack and sees only sensory violence, she is engaging in a classic case of psychological projection, displacing her own internalized resentment onto inanimate objects because her worldview requires an enemy to sustain itself. We are witnessing the absurdity of a Gnostic hatred of matter, a loathing of the physical world so profound that even the act of cooking becomes a crime against the collective. But do not mistake this for mere academic hilarity. It is a calculated deployment of the propaganda axis, where Satu is inverted to make you, the producer and provider, the moral patient, while the oppressed academic is framed as the supreme moral agent. This High Coven member article is a textbook example of how contemporary moral propaganda functions through an autoregressive loop of asymmetric status, identity-gated null-G, and inflated meaning doctrine. Winona claims the null-G of structural determinism to redefine your very existence. She asserts that because status dictates reality, your agency is null and you are merely a puppet of late capitalism. By redefining the biological necessity of eating as extraction and violation, she employs semantic inflation to generate moral panic. Logic dictates that violence, from the Latin vis, force, requires intent to harm. A cinnamon stick possesses no intent, nor does a backpack possess malice. Yet, through the lens of gamma bias, the male act of resource guarding, protecting one's laptop with slash-proof nylon, is framed as paranoia and hoarding, while the male provider is rendered invisible in the equation of survival. It is a demand that you lower your shields, open your gates, and welcome the thief into your home, all to prove your virtue to a mob that hates you. The target here is not cinnamon, nor is it travel gear. The target is you, the Western man, and the civilization you built. While men are checking out of society via suicide at alarming rates, being stripped of authority in family courts, and facing arrest for mere tweets, this ideologue demands you shame your brother for buying a secure bag or ridicule your aunt for baking a pie. This is zipper logic in action, a coercion mechanism designed to punish self-preservation and enforce conformity to a death cult. I will dissect how these 4 riders of the apocalypse, the empathy gap, gamma bias, male disposability, and responsibility without authority, are weaponized to turn your own family into enforcers of this pathology. They wish to burn the cinnamon and leave you with a life that is raw, unfiltered, and undeniably bitter, stripped of all comfort, beauty, and transcendent meaning. I am going to take apart her word games, sentence by sentence, to show you exactly why the red pill is the only cure for this spiritual malaise, and why the only rational response to a demand that you disarm yourself in a hostile world is a firm, logical refusal.
Buncombe article by a feminist PhD. The Spice of Servitude: Why Your Cinnamon Sticks and Anti-Theft Backpacks Are Tools of the Patriarchy, by Dr. Winona, feminist, Marxist, PhD, High Coven member. As we approach the season of compulsory consumption and ritualized gluttony, it is vital that we interrogate the seemingly mundane objects littering our oppressive domestic landscapes. We like to believe we are making choices, that our desires are our own, but as any rigorous critical theorist knows, status dictates reality, and your status as a consumer in a late capitalist hellscape renders your so-called choices null. You are not choosing, you are being conditioned. Take, for instance, the innocent-looking cinnamon stick. To the uninitiated, those locked behind the gates of denology produced by white, Western heteronormativity, it is merely a spice, a fragrant addition to your mulled wine. But through the lens of structural determinism, the cinnamon stick is a violently erected monument to extraction and colonization. It is a rigid, phallic rod of patriarchal domination shoved into the global south to extract flavor and profit for the white palate. When you drop a cinnamon stick into your pot, you are not adding warmth. You are brewing a broth of historical amnesia and sensory violence. The meaning here is clear. Comfort is built on the backs of the oppressed. To partake is to violate. But the oppression doesn't stop at the kitchen counter. It travels with you, strapped to your back in the form of the anti-theft backpack. This artifact is a physical manifestation of the pathology of private property. Why do you need hidden zippers? Why do you need slash-proof fabric? Because the system has succeeded in alienating you from your fellow humans. The anti-theft backpack is the uniform of the paranoid bourgeoisie, a fortress of solitude worn on the spine. The power dynamics here are sickening. The very existence of this bag presupposes a thief, the other, the marginalized, the desperate proletariat whom you fear. You zip up your belongings, claiming immunity from the struggle of the streets, sanctimoniously guarding your laptop and your wallet while the working class starves. The bag creates a physical barrier to empathy. It says, I have and you have not, and I will protect what I have with slash-proof nylon. This is not security. This is the violence of hoarding. And what do you put in this fortress of isolation? Ingredients for holiday recipes. Oh, the perfidy of the traditional meal. These recipes are coded scriptures of domestic servitude, passed down through generations to chain women to the stove. The holiday is a capitalist construct designed to sell plastic junk and force women into unpaid labor. When you bake that pie, you are reenacting the gamma bias of the household. The male as the consumer, moral patient. The female as the provider, moral agent. If the pie is burnt, she fails. If it is delicious, she is merely fulfilling her duty. We must recognize the female rationalization of wrongdoing inherent in these traditions. I do it for the family, she says. I love the smell of cinnamon, she claims. This is sanctioned subjectivism. She is rationalizing her own enslavement, finding meaning in the chains that bind her to the kitchen. The feeling of holiday spirit is a chemical hallucination induced by the patriarchy to keep the domestic labor force docile. It is your duty to reject these narratives. We must abolish the sanction of tradition. When Aunt Karen insists on using cinnamon in her cider, you must step out of the passive role. You must exercise social enforcement. You must shame her for her culinary colonialism. When your brother buys a new anti-theft backpack for his commute, you must ridicule his adherence to property norms. You must expose his fear as a symptom of his fragility. The smallest unit of oppression is the spice. The largest is the state. They are connected by a thread of capitalist exploitation. Do not be complicit. Do not sip the cider of the oppressor. Do not zip the bag of the hoarder. Neologism alert. We are witnessing the rise of zipper logic, the cognitive dissonance required to value security over solidarity. locking oneself away while claiming to care about the collective. Slogan of the resistance: unlock your mind, empty your pack, burn the cinnamon. Only when the backpack is open and the spice rack is bare can we begin to dismantle the structural hierarchies that poison our every breath. The revolution will not be seasoned, it will be raw, unfiltered, and undeniably bitter. The semantics of spite, decoding the phallic projection of sensory violence. When future historians document the West, the current era will likely be characterized not by its accomplishments or technological breakthroughs, but by its pathological fixation on discovering oppression in trivial items. We encounter a writing so completely disconnected from biological reality that it resembles less a political theory and more like the nightmare of a mentally unstable ascetic. Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist PhD, a designation signaling intellectual emptiness, expects us to accept that a cinnamon stick represents a violently erected monument to patriarchal control. Consider the extreme distortion of a mind that views a piece of tree bark, meant to add flavor to drinks, as a weaponized symbol of male power. This demonstrates Freudian projection on a massive scale. Evolutionary psychologists would analyze this as revealing a psyche entirely obsessed with male anatomy, perceiving threats of domination in every rigid, elongated object. The cinnamon stick doesn't oppress, it simply exists. This reveals the writer's own preoccupation with dominance and submission projected outward onto the physical world, because her internal reality is a chaotic void of resentment where anything firm, like a cinnamon stick, backbone or principle, must be diminished to accommodate her feeble perspective. This projection brings us to the rotting heart of the article's domestic analysis, a textbook exhibition of gamma bias. Look closely at how she frames the holiday meal. She cries about the chains binding women to the stove, amplifying the labor of stirring a pot into a narrative of slavery, while simultaneously engaging in the most egregious erasure of male labor imaginable. Who procured the resources for that oppressive kitchen? Who built the structure that shelters it? Who braved the elements and the market to ensure the cinnamon stick and the oven and the electricity were there in the first place? The gamma bias mechanism is clear. Female suffering is maximized and moralized, while male sacrifice is minimized and made invisible. She frames the man as a mere consumer, a moral patient passively receiving the benefits of the matriarch's labor, when in reality, men are the moral agents who make the entire context of that labor possible. The statistics don't lie. Men make up 93% of workplace fatalities. They are the ones working the dangerous jobs to keep the lights on and the pantry stocked. To ignore the life-risking labor of provision while demonizing the act of cooking is not just a lie. It is a moral inversion that seeks to turn the male provider into an oppressor and the female homemaker into a serf, solely to manufacture a grievance where none exists. The arrogance required to peddle this nonsense is protected by a fortress of identity-gated knowledge. Dr. Winona speaks of the uninitiated, those poor souls trapped behind the gates of knowledge produced by white Western heteronormativity. This is the classic epistemic fallacy of the cultist. Let us apply the trivium to dismantle this. Grammar. She defines knowledge not as objective, falsifiable truth, but as adherence to her specific ideological fringe. Logic. Her premise is that critical theory reveals reality, yet her conclusion rests on circular definitions where a spice is oppression, because critical theory says so. Rhetoric. She uses academic jargon like structural determinism to browbeat the layman into submission. This knowledge has zero predictive power. It is merely a linguistic script to signal in-group status. It provides no utility, no engineering solutions, no medical advancements. It is a self-sealing immune system for the ego, designed to make the initiated feel superior to the working man who actually knows how to grow the cinnamon and build the backpack. It is not wisdom, it is a costume of intellect worn by mental children. This costume is stitched together by an intense craving for status asymmetry. The entire premise of the article rests on positioning the critical theorist, the High Coven member, as the ultimate moral agent, the seer of hidden truths, while the average consumer is depicted as a zombie, a moral patient suffering from false consciousness who lacks the agency to choose a spice without being a puppet of late capitalism. It is a power grab. By claiming she knows the true meaning of the cinnamon stick, she asserts authority over your reality. She claims the power to dictate meaning, turning your desire for comfort into a crime. This is the leftist pathology in microcosm. They cannot create, they cannot build, they cannot delight, so they must parasitize the joy of others by redefining it as sin. They strip you of your agency to paint you as a victim, only to then offer themselves as the savior. It is a con game as old as the serpent in the garden, trading on the gullibility of those who have been taught to doubt their own senses. Central to this deception is the semantic inflation of the word violence. Dr. Winona speaks of sensory violence and extraction as if cooking a meal were equivalent to a mugging. Let us examine etymology, the history of language, to dissect this falsehood. The word violence originates from the Latin vis, meaning force, specifically physical force exerted with the intent to harm or violate. To drop a cinnamon stick into hot water is a physical process, indeed a chemical extraction of flavors. But to call it violence requires a malicious intent that simply does not exist outside of the writer's paranoid imagination. Eating is not an act of aggression against the universe, it is the biological necessity of life. By watering down the word violence to include uncomfortable flavors or historical associations, they destroy the word's meaning. If everything is violence, then nothing is. This is a rhetorical strategy designed to bypass your logic centers and trigger a feeling of guilt, making you morally responsible for the inevitable entropy of existence. It is a hatred of matter itself, a Gnostic desire to escape the physical requirements of life by demonizing the fuel that sustains it. This aversion to the material world shows itself in the demand for unfiltered, undeniably bitter reality. The piece ends with a slogan to burn the cinnamon and accept a life unseasoned. This is where Schopenhauer's concept of the will becomes essential to grasp the death cult of the left. Schopenhauer argued that the will, the blind, striving force of nature, is the origin of all suffering, and that art aesthetics is the sole temporary respite from this torment. Spices, music, architecture, holidays, these are the seasonings of life, the aesthetic buffers that render the brutal struggle for existence bearable. They are the transcendent touching the material. To demand a life without seasoning, to demand we strip away the comfort of the hearth and the joy of the feast, is not revolution. It is a resignation to the void. It is a philosophy of despair that seeks to drag everyone down into the grey. Nihilistic pit of the writer's own making because she lacks the capacity to create beauty herself. She wants to abolish the symphony because she is tone deaf. We can expose this resentment with a simple, undeniable syllogism, a logic trap that snaps shut on the leftist worldview. Major premise: the left hates Western civilization and its traditional structures, the patriarchy. Minor premise: cinnamon, comfort, and culinary tradition are inherent products and symbols of Western civilization and its historical development. Conclusion: therefore the left must pathologize cinnamon and comfort as tools of the patriarchy to justify their pre-existing hatred. You see, the logic does not flow from the cinnamon to the oppression. It flows from the hatred to the cinnamon. The oppression is a post hoc rationalization. They do not hate the cinnamon because it is oppressive. They declare it oppressive because they hate the civilization that cultivated it. It is a manufactured grievance to justify a campaign of destruction against a society that rejects their envy. Finally, we need to address the female rationalization of wrongdoing referenced in the passage, particularly the ridicule of women who assert they bake for the family. The writer scoffs at this notion as sanctioned subjectivism. But we can reverse the perspective to uncover the genuine toxic femininity at work here. What causes Dr. Winona such fury when she encounters a woman discovering purpose in a heated kitchen? It's jealousy. It demonstrates the crab bucket mentality in operation. She witnesses a woman establishing a home, nourishing family members, and participating in a concrete gesture of affection that generates authentic human bonding, and it illuminates the void of her own barren, scholarly life. She lacks the capacity to foster a welcoming home, so she feels compelled to destroy the very notion of home. She justifies her own despair and incapacity to form relationships with a partner or family unit by portraying domestic concord as enslavement. She's exploiting her own deficiencies, converting them into a political philosophy to criticize women who experience more joy than she does. Don't allow her resentment to taint your cider. The transformation she advocates isn't about freedom, but rather about widespread isolation. Acknowledge the spice collection for what it represents, a prize from a culture that subdued nature to deliver sweetness to its offspring, and protect it with the intensity it merits. We must recognize this predatory demand for vulnerability as a calculated assault on the power and status axes, utilizing semantic inflation to redefine self-preservation as oppression. Their narrative inverts the duty variable, relying on feeling as truth, to argue that our biological imperative to guard resources is a moral failing, while simultaneously granting the thief immunity through identity-gated no leg. By framing the commuter's prudent caution as an act of dominance, they manufacture a moral license to sanction him, demanding we exchange our actual security for their abstract fantasy of solidarity. The fortress of solitude, exposing the pathology of envy in the anti-theft narrative. Imagine you are walking through the subway station, the stench of urine and unspoken despair hanging heavy in the air, clutching the strap of a bag that contains the entirety of your productive life, your laptop, your work tools, your wallet. Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist PhD, looks at this scenario and does not see a man protecting his livelihood. She sees a fortress of solitude, a symptom of paranoid bourgeoisie alienation. She calls it zipper logic, a cognitive distortion where you value security over solidarity. This is not an analysis, it is a command to lay down your arms before the encroaching horde. Let us dissect this insanity with the scalpel of evolutionary psychology. Dr. David Buss and Professor Gad Saad have exhaustively documented that resource guarding is not a social construct invented by the patriarchy to oppress the proletariat, but a biological imperative hardwired into the human nervous system over millions of years of evolution. To acquire resources is to survive. To guard them is to ensure the continuation of your genetic line. The anti-theft backpack is not a uniform of the paranoid. It is a technological adaptation to a reality where theft is not a theoretical construct, but a statistical probability. When Winona claims the bag presupposes a thief, she is accidentally stating a tautology. The lock presupposes the burglar, the shield presupposes the sword, and the lifeboat presupposes the iceberg. To strip a man of his defenses under the guise of dismantling hierarchies is not an act of liberation. It is an act of predatory enviousness, demanding the productive male expose his belly to the knife, so that the incompetent can feel better about their own failure to build. The article employs a grotesque manipulation of the CTIS axis in the propaganda model. She attempts to frame you, the commuter with the slash-proof bag, as the powerful bourgeoisie possessing high status and hoarding wealth. This is a framing trick designed to make you guilty for possessing what you have earned. In reality, the man on the subway is not a Rockefeller. He is a wage slave in a gynocentric economy where his disposable income is taxed to support a welfare state that often views him as a default predator. He is vulnerable. He is resource scarce. By inflating his power to that of an oppressor, she morally justifies the attack on his property. She demands you exercise duty by rejecting your property norms, framing self-preservation as a moral failing. But ask yourself, what is the primary duty of a man? Is it to Dr. Winona's abstract collective? No. Your duty is to your household, your kin, and your own survival. To fail to guard your resources is to fail your wife, your children, and your future self. The anti-theft backpack is a holy artifact of responsibility. It is the mobile armor of a man navigating a hostile world, carrying the seeds of civilization, his trade and his capital, through the chaos. To demand he unzip it is to demand he dissolve the boundary between mine and theirs, a boundary that is the very definition of sanity. Let us trace the etymology of this insanity back to its roots. The concept of private property is the bedrock of Western civilization, stemming from the Lockean proviso that you mix your labor with the resources of the earth to make them yours. Without the distinction between mine and yours, there is no incentive to produce, no capital to accumulate, and no civilization to speak of, only the nasty, brutish, and short existence of the state of nature that Thomas Hobbes warned us about. When Dr. Winona argues that the bag is a physical manifestation of the pathology of private property, she is arguing for a return to the jungle. She is a death worshipper, dressing up the desire for chaos as high theory. Let us apply a reductio ad absurdum to her logic. If protecting property with slash-proof nylon is a violence of hoarding and a barrier to empathy, then surely locking your front door is an act of aggression against the homeless. Wearing clothes is a barrier to the elements, and therefore a rejection of solidarity with the cold. Having skin is a biological wall preventing you from physically merging with the masses. This semantic inflation, where keeping your stuff becomes violence against the collective, is designed to render the very concept of the self as an act of aggression. It is a philosophical poison gas intended to choke the individual ego, so the hive mind can take over. Observe the empathy gap on full display in her text. She drips with sympathy for the thief, the other, the marginalized, the desperate proletariat. The thief is reframed as a victim of your hoarding. Meanwhile, the commuter, the man who woke up early, worked late, and bought the laptop, is treated with disdain, mocked as paranoid and sanctimonious. This is the gamma bias of the left. Male suffering is invisible. The male's attempt to protect himself is pathologized. This ideology is predicated on hate, defined here as a sustained threat-focused motivation toward a specific target. They hate the man who builds. They hate the man who keeps. They hate the man who says no. Their solidarity is a one-way street. You must give up your fortress of solitude, but they will not give up their tenure, their publication platforms, or their own locked apartments. They demand unilateral duty from you while claiming immunity from the consequences of their own stupidity. They want you to be an open book, a resource node to be farmed by the global south or the local street thug, because they view your agency as a theft from their collective. The most revealing part of this manifesto is the call to action. When Aunt Karen insists on using cinnamon, you must shame her. When your brother buys a new anti-theft backpack, you must ridicule him. This is the NPC hive mind in its final, terminal stage. This is not organic behavior, it is a programmed viral load. The ideological possession is so complete that the host is instructed to destroy their own family relationships to maintain their ideological purity. You are no longer a nephew or a brother, you are a social enforcement officer for the High Coven. This social enforcement is the sanction variable in the propaganda axis. They want you to weaponize shame and ostracism against your own blood, to enforce a narrative that benefits none of you. It is a snake eating its own tail, a demand that you sacrifice your human connections on the altar of anti-theft theory. It is the same mechanism that turns women against their husbands and fathers against their sons in the divorce courts, a systemic weaponization of affection to enforce compliance with a lie. Finally, we arrive at her neologism, zippologic. She defines it as the cognitive dissonance required to value security over solidarity. Let us model this using the irreducible axis of propaganda to see the truth beneath the word salad. Staeasis. The commuter is the oppressor agent. The thief is the victim, patient. Kenneulge critical theory determines that property is theft. Your eyes lying to you about theft are false consciousness. Meaning, security equals hoarding equals moral evil. Feeling. Your desire for safety is fear and fragility, which must be overcome by guilt. Duty. You must open your bag to prove you are not racist classist. Power. The state or the mob has the right to inspect you. You have no right to privacy. Sanction. Ridicule and shame for those who zip up. Immunity. Criticism of this view proves you are a paranoid bourgeois. This zipper logic is simply a fancy term for victim blaming inverted. It blames the victim for not being a victim enough. Do not fall for it. Your logic is sound. If you do not lock it, they will take it. If they take it, you starve. If you starve, the West falls. Buy the stronger backpack, guard your cinnamon, and tell Dr. Winona that her key to the city does not fit the lock on your mind. You stand at the precipice of their lunacy, holding a cinnamon stick. They claim is a phallic weapon of oppression, and you must laugh in their faces. This is not structural determinism. It is a desperate, neurotic projection by a movement that creates meaning only by destroying it. Doctor. Winona and her cohorts are weaponizing gamma bias to invert reality, minimizing your sacrifice as the provider who bought the spices and the backpack while amplifying the suffering of those who would take them from you. They preach zipper logic to shame you for locking your bag, ignoring the biological imperative of resource guarding that has kept our ancestors alive for millennia. Their demand for raw, unfiltered, bitter reality is just a death cult praying for your destruction because they cannot bear the sight of your competence. Look at the world they have built with their tears and lies. Suicide rates for men are skyrocketing. Family courts strip fathers of their children, and the streets are perilous precisely because the thief has been elevated above the citizen. They demand you unzip your fortress of solitude and expose your throat to the wolf, all while claiming moral superiority. But you see the asymmetry. They offer you abstract meaning and moralized feeling, but you require concrete power and sanction over your own life. You are not a bourgeoisie hoarder. You are the steward of your own survival. The empathy gap they enforce is a chasm they dug to bury your future. But you have bridged it with the trivium of truth. So buy the backpack, zip it tight, enjoy the spiced cider, and let the aroma of cinnamon serve as a defiant middle finger to the grey, joyless ideology that seeks to turn men into docile, guilt-ridden automatons. You have broken the spell. You have identified the NPC script of toxic femininity for what it is, a hate-fueled conspiracy to dismantle Western achievement. Go forth and guard your assets, protect your kin, and savor the spices of civilization with a clear conscience. They want the world to be bitter. Make it spicy. And now the sponsored book introduction. Social Capital, the types, uses, and how to acquire it. I spent years watching good men break. Friends drained by divorce courts, colleagues silenced by HR departments for cracking a joke. Young guys so starved of purpose, they'd rather swipe on apps than look a woman in the eye. I wrote this book because I lived every trap they set for us. That gnawing feeling you're a walking ATM. That fear your strength gets called toxicity while your pain gets mocked. I've been there. This isn't theory. It's a battlefield map drawn in blood and betrayal. Our world's rigged. They call it equality, while dismantling everything that makes men essential. You feel it. The marriage plantation waiting to confiscate your freedom, the courts rigged against fathers, workplaces where ambition gets punished as privilege. This book is your breach charge. Inside, you'll build stonewall resilience against their shaming tactics. You'll master the iron ledger, legal and financial shields no system can crack. You'll forge brotherhoods in the real world, not online echo chambers. We dissect the marriage minefield and give you exit strategies. We arm you with evolutionary truth about female psychology so you spot manipulation tactics before they sink in. And we destroy the toxic masculinity lie, exposing how they demonize your instincts while demanding you die protecting theirs. This is for rational men who see the gynocracy. Men ready to lead, not apologize. If you're tired of being a second-class citizen in a society that vilifies your biology, this is your manifesto. We don't peddle vulnerability. We build unshakable fortresses. You'll learn Spartan discipline for physical dominance. You'll deploy dark forest dating strategies that respect your worth. You'll command respect in the market coliseum. And you'll plant flags on legacy ground they can't confiscate. But if you think gender studies has merit, if you believe men should embrace fragility while paying alimony, stop reading. Now close this book, go knit a sweater, watch daytime TV. This isn't for the brainwashed. This is for warriors reclaiming sovereignty. The rest of you, enjoy your decline. We're building empires.
Social Capital: The Types, Uses, and How to Acquire It. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.